friend. You're listening to The Sustainable Bodyworker, the podcast for massage therapists who want to grow thriving, purpose-led businesses without the burnout. Here we talk about nervous system aligned business strategy, pricing that makes sense, client work that doesn't deplete you, and how to build a career that actually supports your life. I'm your host, Gretchen Popp, massage therapist, mentor, educator, and recovering overachiever. Let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of The Sustainable Bodyworker. Today's episode, I am wrapping up the Employers series, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and I'm really excited for you to hear it because over the past several episodes, I have gone into various aspects of whether or not you are ready to hire, what makes people really excited to continue working with you as an employer, and so much more. So in case you haven't checked all of that out, I encourage you to, if becoming an employer or hiring another massage therapist has been on your mind. While I created the First Time Employers Guide, I sat down with 4 massage therapists who are also employers. They each have very different business models, different sized teams, different levels of experience being in that leadership role. And I got to interview each of them to get their perspective so that more people who are going on the journey of employing another body worker can learn from them as well, not just me. Regardless of their differences, what really stood out to me is this. Even with everything that they have that's different, the core message that they have to share is incredibly similar. Being an employer is not just a process of hiring because you're busy. It's not just about getting help and saving you from the chaos. And it's definitely not just about growing for the sake of growth. It requires leadership. It requires a ton of responsibility. And it requires communication, systems, boundaries, support, and being very honest with yourself about what you're actually signing up for when other people's livelihoods start touching your decision. And I think that this matters a lot in our profession because I don't believe the massage world just needs more solo practitioners or business owners. I believe that it will benefit greatly from better employers creating sustainable workplaces for practitioners who will thrive better as an employee. And I go into all of those reasons and my thoughts around that in previous episodes. So again, if you haven't been listening to my employer series, go ahead and start back with episode 41, where I start that series. So in this episode, you're going to hear a handful of snippets from these conversations, little pieces of wisdom from people who have lived this, learned the hard lessons, made mistakes, adjusted, and kept going. And if this topic is hitting home for you, I want you to know that the full interviews with all 4 of these practitioners are available as bonus content inside the First Time Employers Guide, which lives inside the Sustainable Bodyworker membership. It is a 9-hour continuing education course approved by NCBTMB, and it walks through every major piece that a new employer needs to think about if they want to get started on the right foot. And it's also really great if you have already started hiring and you want to make sure to kind of clean up as you go. This isn't just the logistics, but this is the leadership side of it too, and how to scale your team once you do have your core people. And the beautiful part is, inside the membership, you also get coaching support as you move through it. So you're not just consuming information and then sitting there spiraling by yourself about what to do next or managing situations as they arise all by yourself. You are completely supported and held by the community. So let's get into it with this episode. First up is my interview with Rebecca. I wanted to start with Rebecca because she speaks to something that I think a lot of employers struggle with, especially early on. How do you create a workplace where people actually feel respected, supported, and motivated without overgiving, overfunctioning, or trying to keep everybody happy all the time? She gets into the balance between listening well, leading well, and knowing where the line is. Because being a good employer does not mean having no boundaries. And it doesn't mean holding on to people or situations that are no longer healthy just because letting go feels hard. Here's Rebecca. Do you feel like there's any specific, like, keys or secrets to keeping your team happy and engaged?
Yeah, a really big thing is just treat them like people, treat them like humans, treat them with respect and kindness, listen to them. I say every day, I would not have the business that I have today if it weren't for my staff because, like we're small, but we are very tight knit. We look out for one another. And, I've had therapists who, have come to work for me after working at like a chain place or just a really, really toxic place. And actually, one of my employees shortly after, he started, he said, "It's gonna take a little time to, like, get used to how chill it is here and, like, this nice chill vibe." But one thing he said too that he said, "I really like the individuality of, like, all of the rooms and, just being able to express themselves a little bit, more." And and then I always ask them, I ask them for feedback like, "Hey, how can I help you? Like, what do you wanna work on? What do you wanna learn next? How can I support you?" Because again, when they're supported, they're encouraged to work harder and everybody wins.
I love that.
And
That's
I
such
make
an
sure to celebrate them too, you know?
Yeah, totally. That's so super important to like shift the focus onto them. And I talk about, I'm not sure if you're familiar with John Maxwell's leader shifts. And a lot of that is, shifting our perspective from being a solo, got to focus on ourselves to then shining the light on our employees and seeing how we can lift them up.
Yeah,
And when it comes to leadership, that shift from solo, even just from working any other type of job, honestly, to managing a team of massage therapists is a big shift for a lot of people. And I'm curious if there's a specific lesson in leadership you have had a hard time learning or has hit you in a particularly challenging way.
yeah, not everyone is on the same journey as you are, and no one is going to work as hard, like, for your business and in your business as you are. And, you can pour all of your time and energy into something, but if the other person is not being receptive, you're wasting so much just so much space. We again, I've been very fortunate, to have built a, small but really great team, and we've been lucky, like, we don't have a lot of drama, but I think the hardest lesson that I've had to learn was, not let people walk all over me because I am, I sometimes I feel like I give a little bit too much of myself and my resources to my team. And, 90% of the time it's met with respect and gratitude. But, when things start to kind of, I don't know, shift a little bit, really pay attention to what's going on because, if you have like one employee who is unhappy, eventually that will bring the entire morale down of the team. And, that's something that I found out after the fact. Like after I let an employee go, then I started to hear stories and I told my staff, I said, that's never going to happen again. And if it does, I want you to come to me. So, you really need to know that you need to have an open door policy with your team. And also, you got to know when to cut the cord. And yeah. And don't, like the motto is right, slow to hire, quick to fire. And so when, I had another employee where I thought maybe this isn't the best fit, I cut that cord really quick rather than like, well, maybe it'll be better. Maybe, we'll give it one more month. No, just do both yourselves a favor and just end it. Clean
Yeah.
break.
Yeah. I mean, the more experiences you have when you're like, oh, let's give it a try, and you realize no, it's not going to change. You
Yeah.
realize it's so much easier just be like, you know what, you'll be better elsewhere, and it frees up everyone. It's respectful to everyone when that decision is made, even if it's a challenging one. Now we're moving on to my conversation with Ezra Leah, otherwise known as Ez. What I appreciate about Ez's perspective is how honest it is about the people pleasing many of us carry into leadership. A lot of massage therapists become employers before they've really examined that part of themselves. So instead of hiring from clarity, they hire from hope, from urgency, from wanting to be liked, from not wanting to disappoint anyone. And that can get messy real fast. In this clip from the full interview, Ez talks about what has changed when she stops treating hiring like a leap of faith and started building an intentional process that actually protects both the employer and the applicant. And just as a reminder, if you want support in building your own process, I go in depth in this process and how to set yourself up for success with your new hires inside the First Time Employers Guide inside the Sustainable Body Worker membership. All right, here's my conversation with Ez. Now, you mentioned that, after that first season, you were able to have that space to kind of step back and look at what you might have done differently. Is there anything that stands out now from where you're looking at now? Anything that you would have significantly done differently in the hiring process or in making that transition from employee to employer?
Well, yeah, how I hire now is very, very different than how I hired then. How I hired then was I almost sold myself as I'm good to come work for. And if someone said yes, I was like, "Okay, let's
Yeah.
go." And, I found that what I had to do was really pull back and create a rule book for how as like to build her castle in the sky, is what I like to say. And my specialty, I it's just a natural talent, is building systems. And so I was able to pull back from the places I had worked at that I really enjoyed to the moments that I didn't appreciate too, and kind of put it together and say, you know what? I really need this kind of person to show up for me. So, how I hire now is we tell you how it is to work for us, but we also tell you who we're looking for. And we do a three-step journey of in that, with a phone interview and then a hands-on interview and then a offer letter and then a final conclusion decision talk where we slow everything down. Back then, I did instant hires. "You wanna work? Let's come play." And it would backfire on me sometimes because
Yeah.
it didn't take enough time to even know someone else's needs. And
Mm.
so when it backfired on me, a lot of times it's for people's own needs, Driving up a mountain is a very different world, and then driving up an icy mountain is a completely different
Well,
world.
those are the best days to get work too. You gotta be comfortable with driving in the snow in a resort town.
Yeah, so hardcore rules of, you have to show up for work. Snow is no excuse. Don't even bother having that as an excuse. Figure it out ahead of time, but be careful, right? So give yourself plenty of times to then we really had to find that we had moms that, they got scared on a slide on the mountain and it's like, it's not worth it to me. It's not worth it for my kids. And then you have to be like, I get it.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you find new rules of how you tell people, this is part of the job. Does that feel safe to you? Do you feel like you can manage that? Making people aware of timeframes of traveling too were a big thing. Going up a mountain in without snow takes 20 minutes. Going up or down with snow and with traffic can be an hour plus. And so bringing that awareness to people and making sure that they could not just get caught up with my dream and my excitement, but also just the reality of it before they said yes became a big part of my hiring cause and where I shifted from the beginning to where I shift now. I don't honestly try to sell myself now. We know what a great environment we have to work for. We know exactly what we're asking of our people too, and we know how to communicate that throughout on the front end, and so we have a lot of places in between, "Hey, it's nice to meet you," and, "Hey, would you like to work with us?" That we're both giving options, "Hey, this is a good time to opt in and out if it doesn't fit. This is the time to opt in and out if it doesn't fit." And I honestly tell people, we're looking for
people that wanna grow their roots. So if you come here, while we're a right to work state, you need to consider being here for this length of time before you make your commitments. Otherwise, it's not worth it to you or to me. And so we try to really fully have those discussions before people come on our team.
Yeah. So, so important. Now, you mentioned you're good at systems. So I'm imagining that you've developed a really good system for this piece of the hiring process. But how do you attract those quality applicants? So, because that is a lengthy process. And the one thing I've discussed with so many people is like, man, they just ghost, or I'm interviewing so many people and it's not right. So, have you developed a trick to make sure that the people who are applying are right as possible from the get-go?
Absolutely, and we've developed a tricks to make sure people aren't wasting our time
Yeah.
too, because the no-shows and the people just hiring for unemployment, especially,
Yeah.
over the last couple of years have been big hassles on employers and a lot of time wasters for us, and so I think interviewees don't understand what's happening on our side either, where we're like, I'm getting frustrated too, when I've shown up and someone else isn't willing to communicate. What we've done is our first step process is we do of course, our online Indeed ad in the ads that we put out into the world, we market for what we're looking for. And just like we market to our customer base for what they should expect when they come in, we market to a team for what they should expect when they come in and the issues that we can solve, the solutions that we can give as a team, but also just complete details of who we're looking for so that when they walk into the job, we haven't there's no hidden cause here
Yeah.
about what we're doing or what we're asking. And so our first asks and our first inquiries really begin with a 20 to 30-minute phone interview with an admin, and they have to confirm their interviews. It's all systematized online, just like it is for our client base, so that we ensure that someone's confirmed and is choosing to show up for the appointment. And so the first things we're looking for is, does your resume look good? Because let's just start there. Do you have the basics of an email and a phone number? And is it have you bothered to look at our website?
Yep.
That's what we're looking for in our first interview. Have you bothered to just peek? And stuff. So when you show up, when you confirm, that's kind of a flag for us. Okay, someone's confirming. You show up to the interview online on time. Okay, we got another
Yep.
green flag. If you didn't show up on time, do we have, a reason, a why, a purpose? And did you communicate that well enough for us that we're like, hey, bypass that yellow flag. Let's move on to we can move on to the interview if something came up and we're just utilizing good communication. Or,
Yeah.
hey, no, it's not important to you. So if it's not important to you, we're not going to prioritize it on our time and our time. And so these are kind of little, I like to say, stepping stones we put along the way to see, are you going to hit our stepping stone? In our online ad, though, we're asking what we want. Are you happy? Are you communicative? Can you show up as a professional? Can you see people on it? Can you see clients and meet them on the table each time and each day with the service that they're looking for? Can you leave the treatment notes and act alongside medical professionals in accordance with HIPAA laws and with the medical community? Because while we are a spa by name, we function alongside the medical community and have performed massage from birth to hospice care and everything in between, and want to see we don't expect our providers to be able to show up along all those lines, but we want them to be able to communicate clearly their proficient therapeutics and how they can fit into our team. And that's what the whole interview process is about. So our first one is, can you even bother to communicate properly with us? And is this job, is how we explain it to it on the phone, worth it for you to show up to, you know? And I'll be honest, if you're first, I mean, we're fully disclosing about the money. Fully disclosing
Yeah.
about the money. But if your first questions are demands without understanding about income, that's another flag for us too, you
Yeah.
know, because we understand what we're paying as an employer and what we're also offering as a full benefits package. And so it takes kind of that listening on both sides of the spectrum.
Now let's move on to my conversation with Morgan. Morgan brings a voice to a part of leadership that I really don't think gets talked about enough in this profession. There is a real emotional weight to being responsible for a team. And if your only reason for hiring is that you want more money, more ease, or a little distance from your treatment room, you might be in for a rude awakening because this role asks more of you, not less, at least in the beginning. In this clip of the full interview, Morgan speaks really honestly about the toll, the purpose, and why you have to be deeply connected to your why if you're going to build something sustainable as an employer. And I love this because it is such a core tenet of what I teach about and what I speak to inside the employer's guide. So, if you really want to build a team that is really rooted in your values, you have a culture and a mission driven team, definitely check out the First Time Employer's Guide as well. All right, here's Morgan.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it when I say that this level of an expansion has been exhausting and isolating, and it's nonstop work. And you just kind of have the realization that you're like, I took the hard road, but there is with a purpose. So for me, it's kind of that balance. Like, I know I have a purpose, I know what I'm building, but it does not come without sacrifice for sure. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that you circle back to purpose. That's so, so, so important. That's a huge
yeah,
component of what I teach. And like, you got to go back to like your mission, everything,
you're
because there's
why.
going to be days that you are like, why am I doing this? Like, why do I have
Yeah,
15 children all of a sudden? I didn't sign up for this. But the bigger
yeah,
picture keeps you attached to that in a
absolutely.
really meaningful way. So, for someone considering hiring, say you like had a little sister or someone that's like considering hiring and maybe they're feeling hesitant about it. What would you say to them?
I think they need to evaluate if being an employer is something that they are genuinely interested in doing. Not just for the money part of it. I mean, yes, and getting away from that linear income for sure. There's other ways of doing that though, whether it's offering products or, something else. There's a way to scale your business, put in an infrared sauna or something along those lines that just if being an employer is not appealing to you because you are now taking on the responsibility of someone else's livelihood. So you just have to understand that it's not just whatever, like you are taking on that responsibility. So just knowing for sure. Yes, like even on bad days, I still want to be an employer.
Let's move along to my conversation with Jenny. I wanted to include Jenny here because team culture can make or break the whole experience of being an employer. A lot of people think hiring is the hard part. And sure, hiring, that whole process, it really does matter. But what happens after people come into the business matters just as much. In this clip from the full interview, Jenny talks about what changed when she stopped trying to control everything, when she started building more trust with her team, and got serious about creating a team environment where people could actually work together well instead of just kind of pulling against each other. Here's Jenny. So, with the team that you currently have and learning along the way, is there a strategy or like a key to keeping your team, just satisfied with the workplace?
So, because we're such a small business, I feel that we can I can be really transparent with them. And I think that they have found a lot of value in that with me when I can talk about like, okay, guys, we have these goals, or I'm barely gonna be able to make payroll this week, and I will always find a way, and I always ensure that they're going to get paid. But it's it's just like I said, being transparent, talking about like if we have a customer that wasn't exactly the nicest customer, I'll call them into a group meeting and kind of do like a training session about that so that they know how I was affected by it. And if someone else was affected by it in a different way, then they all just kind of, I don't know what the right words are. Everything just kind of clicks really well. And also knowing what motivates them keeps them really happy too.
Yeah, totally. It seems like transparency and just like that community culture is a big piece of your culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being in a small business, like, it's not like we have 15 people coming in and out of here every day that are employees, and so we've all become very tight knit, and we're all like an open book. You hear that from the big corporations, like, we're all like family here, and it kind of gets a little monotone,
Yeah.
but I feel in a small business like this, we really do get like that. Like, we all cheer each other on, and there's no competition between us, and we celebrate each other's wins, and it's become a great place to work. Like, even though I'm running the business, I come here every single day almost, and I don't dread it. I love it, and I think my employees feel the same way. Anytime we do like a big radio promotion or a Facebook Live, everybody seems to get excited and prepares themselves. And even if they're not going to get paid for it, they get excited for it. So, and I think that's just from what I've built for them.
Yeah, yeah, and they get to contribute. I feel like so much more than a paycheck. People feeling like they're contributing to something greater than themselves is such a key piece of just being satisfied in life in general. It doesn't really even matter if you're getting paid for it. It doesn't matter if you're, recognized for it in any way, but feeling that contribution is important for satisfaction.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. I hope hearing all four of these perspectives gave you a fuller picture of what this path really asks of you. Because I think one of the biggest takeaways here is that good employment does not happen by accident. It takes intention, systems, communication, boundaries, so much support. And it takes a willingness to look honestly at yourself, too. A lot of what these women shared points back to the same few truths. Hiring too fast creates problems. People pleasing creates problems. A lack of systems creates problems. Avoiding hard conversations creates problems. And trying to grow a team without being willing to actually lead one creates problems. But on the flip side, when you approach this role with clarity, self awareness, and the right structure, it can become something really beautiful. It can become a way to create more support, more impact, and a much healthier work environment than a lot of us have experienced in this profession. So, if becoming an employer is something you're seriously considering, or maybe you've already started and you want to make sure you're doing it in a way that's actually sustainable, I'd really encourage you to check out the First Time Employer's Guide inside the Sustainable Bodyworker membership. It's a 9-hour continuing ed course. It goes into every major aspect of becoming a new employer with far more depth than I could ever fit into a single podcast episode. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the full interviews with all four of today's guests are included in there as a bonus, which I think adds up so much more richness and perspective to the learning. And beyond the course itself, you also get access to coaching support inside the membership, which really matters when you're navigating real life decisions, real team dynamics, and all the stuff that comes up that no checklist can fully prepare you for. And if you're listening to this thinking, I'm not actually sure becoming an employer is my next right move, that's okay too. I'd point you toward my Sustainable Success Blueprint, which is also linked in the show notes. That's a 1.5 CE hour class designed to help you figure out your next best course of action based on your own values, your own goals, and the kind of life and business you actually want to build. Because employment is one path, but it's not the only path. Thank you so much for being here with me today. If this episode gave you something to think about, I'd love for you to share it with another massage therapist who's considering hiring, growing a team, or trying to become a better employer than the ones they may have learned from. Take care, so much love to you, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to The Sustainable Bodyworker. If something resonated for you today, grab your free breakthrough session, which includes a custom hypnotherapy track to help you unlock the next level. Grab it now with the link in the show notes. And to hear more, hit subscribe. We'll see you next time.